Okay, so now we have our profile with our user info and our listings. In this video, I want to make the delete work. So right now, we do have the button, right? So the delete button right here is hooked up to handle delete property, and we're passing in the property ID. And we defined the function in the last video. We should pass in, let's say, property ID. And just to test that out, we can do a quick console log of the property ID just to make sure that's hooked up. So click delete, and you should see the ID in the browser console. So in here, we want to make a request to our API route to delete, which we haven't created yet. So let's do that first. Now we're following RESTful routes, so it's going to be app API properties brackets ID and then route.js. And we already have a GET request here. So what we can do is copy this and let's paste that in here. And this will be a delete and rename the function delete. And a lot of this is going to stay, but we're going to add to it because we do need to find the property, right, in order to delete it. But we're going to have to do a couple other things. We need to make sure there's a session, and we need to match the user in the session to the property owner because we don't want just anybody to delete any property. So that means we have to bring in our session user file. So let's say import get session user from our utils file that we created. Okay, and then down here, let's this params.id, that's how we get it from the URL. We're going to have to use this in a couple places. So instead of putting this here, let's do property ID, and then let's create that variable up here. We'll say const property ID and set that to params.id. And then for the session, let's say const session user, set that to get session user. Actually, that needs to be await get session user. All right, and then let's see, we want to make sure that there's a session and a session user. So let's say if not session user or not session user dot user ID, then we want to return a new response from this route. And as far as the message goes, we'll just say user ID is required, and then we'll send a status of 401 unauthorized. Okay, and we'll just put a comment here, check for session, and then if there is a session, we can then get the user ID. So let's say const, we'll destructure user ID from session user. It's not a function. Now, since we have the property, and because we're getting the property here, right, and we have the user ID, let's verify ownership. So we get the property. If it's not found, we'll return a 404. And then here, let's say verify ownership. So we can do that by checking to see if the property that we just got, if the owner, and we'll just make this sure that this is a string. So if that is not equal to the user ID in the session, then we want to return a new response. Whoops. We're going to return a new response, and we'll just say unauthorized because that's not the user's listing, and we'll send a status of 401. All right, now if it is the user, then we're going to keep going here, and we're going to delete the property by saying await and take our property, and then there's a method we can use called delete one. And that's it. And then, well, as far as the response here, I'm not going to send the property. I'm just going to send a message that says property deleted 200. All right, so that should do it for the route. Now we have to hit this route in this function in the page. So before we do anything, I want to just confirm, since it is a delete. So we'll have a little box that asks if we're sure. So let's say confirmed. We'll set that to window.confirm. And let's say, are you sure you want to delete this property? Okay, and then we'll just check. We'll say if not confirmed. If not confirmed, then let's return. And we can make sure that that pops up. Good. So next, we're going to do a try catch, and we want to make our request. So let's say const res equals, we want to await fetch. Now make sure that you make this asynchronous. So we just want to add async there so we can use await. And let's fetch inside some backticks. We're going to say /API/property/ and then the ID, which we can get from property ID, which is being passed into the function. Now, this is really important. You want to make sure it's a delete request. So let's add in another argument here with an option of method, and that method is going to be delete. Okay. Then we want to check the status that comes back from that request in that response variable. So let's say res status equals, if it equals 200, that means everything's okay. So then we want to remove the property from the UI or from state. If we don't do this, if we don't filter it out, then we're going to have to reload the page in order to see it gone. So let's create a variable called updated properties and set that to properties.filter and pass in a function here. We don't even need curly braces, but we're going to say for each property, then we want to check if the property _ID of the current listing, current property in the iteration, if that is not equal to the property ID that's passed into the function. So that will give us all the properties except for the one that we want gone, that we want deleted. Then we can finally update the state to updated properties, which is our new array. Okay, and then after that, I'm just going to do a console log for now that says property deleted. Actually, we could do an alert, but alerts are really ugly, so in the next video, we'll create toast notifications. But for now, we'll just do an alert. Okay, and then let's have an else here, so meaning if it's not 200, then let's just alert. We'll just say failed to delete property. And then down, we'll copy that, and then down here in the catch, we'll do the same thing, and we'll also console log whatever the error is. Okay, so let's try that out. Now, I don't want to delete any of the current properties that I have because it takes a while to add these. So let's just add a dummy listing real quick. So just put whatever. Okay, and then we do need an image in order to submit the form, so I'll just grab whatever and then add property. Okay, so that gets added. Now if I go to my listings or my profile, that should be there. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete and click OK. Well, if we click cancel, make sure it doesn't delete. Then we'll click OK. Failed to delete property. Okay, let's reload and see. All right, so we got failed to delete property. Let's look in the console down here and see. Okay, it's not telling us anything. All right, so something went wrong here. API, oh, property. This should be properties. All right, let's try that again. Just reload and delete. Okay. Property deleted. It's gone. Let's reload. And it's gone. All right, so we were successfully able to delete our property. Now, I don't like the alert saying, property deleted, so in the next video, we're going to implement a package called React Toastify.